It's usually not about what your mother did or even what she didn't do. A lot of it comes down to what her capacity was. If she didn't have a level of presence or attunement to you and your needs, then that will create some sort of gap or wound. What is your mother wound and how you can permanently heal it? Through breathwork. Today, I'm going to be explaining the concept of the mother wound and how to identify not only what yours is, but also how it's showing up in your life. And then the process of using breathwork to completely transform it. I have worked with hundreds of women at this point to do this exact thing that I'm going to describe. The mother wound is the most important thing that you could look at when it comes to doing healing and personal growth work and really being able to create permanent change. So if you struggle with chronic symptoms or patterns that you haven't been able to break, and you've been to therapy, you've done other types of healing, you've read books, you've tried affirmations, all these different things, if you haven't been able to effectively examine and reconcile this relationship and its impact on you, then you probably haven't gotten very far. And that's not, to be rude or mean. It's just the reality of the situation. So your relationship with your mother creates an imprint for how you perceive all relationships. When you think about it, your mother was your first primary relationship. And in fact, when you were developing in her womb and even after, you really didn't even have an awareness that you were separate from her, right? And a lot of times we even identify as different things that our mother is because at one point we didn't know the difference between her and us. And we do take on her consciousness, we take on her psyche, because if you think about it, consciousness is energy. Cells are energy, and we are literally being created from the cells of our mother's body, right? So it makes sense that we would take on pieces of her consciousness, beliefs, the way that she sees the world, the way that she feels about herself, the way that she relates, right? So all of these things are very important to take into consideration when we're looking at the mother wound, because it's not simply just your mother's relationship with you. It goes a whole lot deeper than that. It's actually your experience of her in the womb, your experience of her growing up in your early childhood years, watching her, feeling her energy and responding mostly unconsciously to what you could feel from her, right? So the way you related to your mother and the way you felt around her will create an imprint for what you expect to feel in relationships, right? And a lot of this can be very subtle, because I have a lot of clients who come to me and say, well, I had a pretty good relationship with my mother, or my mother was great. My mother and I had a good relationship, which can be true, right? But it's usually not about what your mother did or even what she didn't do. A lot of it comes down to what her capacity was and what she was already dealing with within herself that made it so she only had so much capacity to be present for you and to help you make sense of your experiences, right? Your emotions, your fears, the things that were happening around you. If she didn't have a level of presence or attunement to you and your needs, then that will create some sort of gap or wound in your development and in your relationship to her, but really in your relationship to yourself. Children need someone who not only cares for and nurtures them, loves them, and connects with them, but also someone who's attuned to their needs without them having to say anything, without them having to express themselves, right? And when we're babies, we cry, and that's how our mothers know that we need something. But as we get older, it can be really hard for kids, especially under the age of 7, to be able to express what they actually need and how they feel, because they don't have the words to express what they're feeling. So a mother's job is to be attuned to those needs and be able to sense them so that they can meet them for the child, and the child can regulate their nervous system through the mother's nervous system, right? And if they can't do that, then they start to feel unsafe. They start to feel like there's something wrong. And because it's too terrifying to think that your mother is not capable of taking care of you or nurturing you or loving you, then you internalize it to think that there must be something wrong with you, right? If you're not getting those needs met on some level, even if it's just an emotional level, or even if your mom just doesn't have the ability to be fully present with you, because that's what kids need. I worked with kids as a school counselor for over a decade. And one thing I learned hands down is that kids just need someone to be present with them with no agenda, just present, listen, hold space, create safety. That's what they need in order to feel safe. And if you didn't get that, it could affect you in a variety of ways, right? You could have internalized an unconscious feeling or belief that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, there's something wrong with you, you don't matter, you're not important, you're not valuable. And these are all unconscious beliefs or feelings that we will project onto our relationships, especially our most intimate relationships. If you have a partner now in your adult life and you constantly feel like they are criticizing you, it might be because you always felt either criticized by your mother, or you always felt like you weren't doing a good enough job, or you weren't valuable, or you felt rejected. So then anything that your partner says about you that isn't necessarily positive, you would perceive as a rejection, because there's a part of you that is attempting to reconcile that unmet need that you didn't get from your mother. So this relationship will show up in all areas of your life, your intimate relationships, your career, your relationship with your boss, that's a big one, your relationship to money, and just your general sense of feeling safe and secure in the world. And even if you had a good relationship with your mom, you really want to be able to examine what were the unmet needs, what were the places that you didn't feel seen or didn't feel acknowledged, or the places where you needed something from her that she wasn't able to give you. And then really looking at what is that feeling in your body, and then how is that feeling showing up in these different areas of your life, because it's going to look a little different in each place, right? But really the key to being able to shift this is first being able to pinpoint what's really happening. And that can be challenging without some support. And this is what I help my clients do all the time, is really being able to get to the bottom of like what's actually going on here. What is the unmet need, and what is the feeling that's driving the pattern that's showing up in all of these areas, right? The pattern of, feeling rejected or people pleasing, or feeling like you're always being criticized, whatever it is, that pattern, that lens that you're seeing the world through is being driven by subconscious suppressed emotion. So in order to really shift that pattern, you need to address that emotion. And that's where the breath work comes in. So what I do with my clients is, once we pinpoint what that deeper emotion is that's driving the pattern, and the pattern doesn't even have to be relational. It can also be a bad habit, a behavior pattern, right? It could be something like an addiction or emotional eating or shopping. All of those things are attempts to soothe yourself from not having that deeper need met in childhood. And some people have the experience of, they will be around their mother now and they have a somewhat good relationship with her, but they will get triggered by her and not understand why, because they're like, oh, well, she's not doing anything wrong, but why does she annoy me so much? And it's because her presence is triggering this unmet need from childhood that you still haven't addressed or reconciled. So the way to do this is through addressing and feeling that suppressed emotion that's being held in your body. And that's where the breath work comes in. Once you're able to pinpoint what this deeper feeling is, then you can use the breath work to start to move it and process it and shift it out of the body. And then, with the mother wound, it's a process, right? It's not going to happen in one breath work session, because this is foundational to not only your relationships with other people, but the way you see the world, and most importantly, the way you see yourself and the way you relate to yourself. Because I always say we'll treat ourselves the way our parents treated us until we get conscious of it and shift it, right? So the biggest thing here is being able to look at how you're actually treating yourself or relating to yourself based on this deeper feeling that you have, based on the unmet needs around your mother. Like if you feel like you're not worthy or you're a bad person or whatever, these are unconscious beliefs that are really going to drive the way that you see yourself, the way you relate to yourself, what you think you are capable of, what you think you deserve. So these are really important things to look at, and they are all being held in place by an unconscious suppressed emotion that's held in the body. And when you're able to access that through the breath work, you start to break apart that pattern, because that emotion releases from the body. And then that lens that you're seeing the world through starts to shift, and you're able to relate to people differently. You're able to be more neutral and more present in your relationships, because you're not constantly getting triggered by this unmet need of, needing to feel acknowledged or constantly feeling rejected. So when you're able to pinpoint what this is, then you can start to move through it using the breath. And I recommend journaling, processing the emotions that come up, and first and foremost, getting support. But if you are really looking to create a change in your life and you haven't been able to successfully do it permanently, this is definitely something you want to dive into, because I always tell my clients this is the one relationship that we will come back to over and over and over again, because it sets the tone for how you relate to everyone else in your life, how you relate to the world, and most importantly, how you relate to yourself. So if you have questions, please leave them in the comments. If this is resonating for you, please leave it in the comments. And if you'd like to dive in deeper into this with me, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm happy to go deeper with you in your specific situation to get to the bottom of your mother wound. But I'm telling you right now, if there's something in your life that you're still struggling with, you want to go deeper into looking at this relationship. Even if you think you've already done so much work around this, there's always more. And that's not something that means to be daunting. It's just how it is. But when you learn how to move through it in an efficient and effective way, which is what I teach people how to do, it doesn't have to be hard, and it will get you where you want to go. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.